May the memory of Hirsch Goldberg-Polin, the son of Rachel and John, be for a revolution. What you have in front of you is a book that is incredibly difficult to read, describe, but what is essential for us is that we treat it as the sacred text that it is. I hope that you will take the opportunity, if you haven't already, to read it and to make sure to buy a copy and give it to someone else. There have been a few books that have been published through the course of Jewish history that aren't only intended for within the Jewish community. But this is part of our sacred canon, no less than Viktor Frankl, whose Man's Search for Meaning became core to Jewish identity, philosophy, theology. But not only that, Frankl's book was so precious to Hirsch that he taught from that book in the tunnels. That book that was written by Viktor Frankl, a survivor of Auschwitz, who created out of his experience an entire school of therapy called logotherapy, was an inspiration that Hirsch brought forward. This is, of course, about Hirsch. It is, of course, about Rachel. It is, of course, about John. But because of who the three of them are, and because of who we as a people have helped them be, I mean, we are a tremendously capacious tradition. We must be, to have had one of our daughters and mothers generate this. So what I prepared is totally inadequate. I don't really know how to sum this up because you just shouldn't even try. But if you've been in Rachel's presence, as so many of us have been, I was blessed to be here that first time. They lived in Berkeley, California, and moved to Richmond, Virginia. I was a rabbi in Berkeley, California. My father is a rabbi in Richmond, Virginia. I felt like I was just looking at a mirror in those moments, a frightening, complicated, very alive, very loving mirror. And in a certain sense, that's what this book is. A very complicated, beautiful mirror. Look at what the title is. Just let that in if you haven't already given it enough thought. And we'll never give it enough thought, but give it some. When we see you again. Amen. So what I try to do on the sheets that you have at your table is find very short quotes that are anything but short in their context. The content is minimalist, because what I wanted to make sure we did is take in a few words at a time. It's not to say that we'll understand, because we can't. It's not to say that we'll be able to communicate this. I don't think I'm going to be able to. But Rachel managed, with support from her family and her friends and from each of us. Her gratitude is not a performance. You know that she's not putting on airs. She said on Anderson Cooper, she used to wear makeup. She hasn't worn makeup since October 7th. She used to let her hair down. She talked about very simple things. There's no artifice. Her gratitude to us is sincere. It is real. We should let that in too, inasmuch as this is a weighty context. And grief is not something we would wish to jump into as an emotional sharing. It is part of who we are. And in small ways, which never feel small, we each go through it. I'll give you just a fun context with which to begin, because this is anything but fun. But if you're a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as I am, in one of the most wonderful miniseries that was released on Disney Plus is WandaVision. It's an exploration of grief in addition to great storytelling. And in it, I won't give you the context because you really should watch it just for that reason, besides the fact that it's awesome. Vision and Wanda are a couple. And Vision has already died, but is somehow still there. And he says, as an act of comfort to Wanda, what is grief but love enduring? It's not fair to try to sum up any big emotion with words. It never works. But if that's true, and I think it is, boy, is this a book of love. Boy, do we have a teacher in our midst who can guide us well. So I just want to show you the quotes. and then we won't be done, because that doesn't exist. But we'll channel all of this and allow it to enter into our own consciousness even more deeply than it already has, and do good for other people with all of this. If we can help this love travel and support someone else in need, what a blessing to be part of that purpose. How lucky we are that Rachel blew us a kiss. Again, that's what this is. So here are the quotes. Some of these are very well known by now. Hope is mandatory. You'll see for each quote, I did like my own really small font sum up at the top, but I want to share with you just a drop of related thinking from within Jewish tradition. And I'll do this quickly. But I gave you the sheet so you'd have something to walk away with, just in case it's not quick enough. Hope is mandatory is her language. She offered that in April 2024, but it also comes from a place of our tradition in the Mishnah, which is, just say, old. Don't worry about the dates except it's Jewish and old and was written after great loss of the temple in Jerusalem. There's a teaching that says one should not enter into prayer without what they call koved rosh, a serious place in your mind, which means even in and especially in and only from a place that is serious and engaged in the world, we take the weight of existence seriously. Even from and only from a place that is seriously engaged in the world, do you pray? Which means when you are engaged in the seriousness of the world, you still can pray. And praying is an obligation. Another way of saying that in English is, hope is mandatory. When we are in a world that feels so uncertain, and we are, I don't know what your prayer practice is. That's not a prerequisite to being part of our holy community. But I pray from that place for the world to not experience that. But it's only because I'm in it that I know how to pray. Hope is mandatory, only needs to be heard by someone who needs to be reminded. They are not a number. This was offered after the Proof of Life video, which Anderson Cooper actually shared with Rachel and John after he realized during an interview that he had seen the Proof of Life video that they hadn't yet seen. They are not a number is a way of us saying, we can't say the hostages or the former hostages or those who died in captivity. Each one of them is a human being. We know that better than most because of all of our work with individual human beings, family members and redeemed hostages and those who were killed. We know their names. But because of the passage of time, we might begin to think about them as a category. The freshness of the moment made it impossible to think in that way. It's been some time, and given the pace of events in the world, it's very easy to lose the individuality of these human beings. And I often feel guilty when I return to Israel, not because I've returned to Israel, but when I go to the site at Nova, I go straight to Hirsch's monument. And I feel guilty that his is the name that I know, that I always go to. Part of that is because Rachel and John are so relatable to so many of us. Part of it is because of the effectiveness of their advocacy. They never did it only for Hirsch, that it's Hirsch's name that I know. And part of our work is going to be cultivating our own capacity for memory in our individual work, in our immediate work here in New York, beyond, and to remember, because we will be the ones who remember individual lives. Every person is an entire universe. Just behind Mark, you'll see that quote on the wall, right? It might not be our mission statement on letterhead, but that's on our wall. One who saves a life saves the entire world. That's from Mishnah Sanhedrin. And where did John Polin teach that? At the DNC. Out of our deep pain, which I can't fathom theirs, but our collective pain focused through their grieving hearts, at that moment still aching for the return of their son, John Polin got up at the Democratic National Convention and taught Torah. How proud we should be. That's part of our tradition. And we have a spokesperson who's a loving father. And he taught something that I never would have expected to hear. given the context of this pain, the ease of rage and reactivity, for him to say, in a competition of pain, there are no winners. Why say what is so natural to say? I feel like saying it even right now. My pain is greater. He said, no, it's not. So how dare I allow myself to say such a thing? I don't know what to do with his reprimand, but I dare not ignore it. There's no reason to compare pains. Pain is true when someone feels it, and there's no way really to communicate it. So how do I know? Well, John told me I don't. I barely know my own. You didn't have to choose. Rachel wrote that when she was surrounded by other family members of hostages still in captivity. But you didn't have to choose is also a way of her channeling forward one of the most important quotes from Viktor Frankl's writing. If you know one quote of his, this is it. And if you don't yet know this quote, I recommend it really highly. It is a good way of facing moments. He said, in between stimulus and response, there is a pause. If you know this quote, you know where I'm going. If not, I'm just going to repeat it again. In between stimulus and response, there is a pause. Stimulus is what something or someone does to you. Response is what you do next. So he said, in that pause, we have a choice. And in that choice lives our freedom. How we respond to what is done to us, what happens to us, that's a choice we have. I'm going to the top right, just because it's such a beautiful quote, love and pain and love. Rachel keeps on quoting something that I know Viktor Frankl quotes in Man's Search for Meaning, which is itself a quote from the Song of Songs, that love is more powerful than death. Anderson Cooper asked her in an extended interview with Rachel and John, do you ever hate? She says, no, I don't hate. I love, and love will endure, and I don't believe hate will endure. Love grows. Hate runs out. For her to be able to say that, that's Torah worth really exploring, trying to let that in. Number 7, this relates to our mental health work and also just the process of being alive. This question, how do I survive the next 15 minutes? That should not be a question that anyone has to ask, but there are moments in trauma where we do. And so what she says is not, how will I forever be past this? Trauma doesn't ever go away. It actually can be mitigated, but it kind of lives here. Trauma triggers trauma. And so she says, what is a way of moving forward through life when you experience something serious and traumatic? How will I survive the next 15 minutes? Not hour, day, year. 15 minutes. It's a nice gift because the world can sometimes be triggering. I'll go quickly through the last 3. Let me stand next to you. Anyone ever visit a Shiva house, a traditional house of Shiva? I mean, it's a mitzvah, and we know people who've lost people, so unfortunately we'll have opportunity, and many of us have had many opportunities. When you go to a Shiva house, you know the hardest thing? If you've been to a Shiva house, you know the hardest thing, which is to be quiet, not to say anything. Most Shiva houses forget this. You talk about the latest score or something, just to change the topic. Or you offer clumsy words to try to comfort. Never works. Even love is clumsy in those moments. And so what Rachel is saying is actually, don't try to fix me right now. She says, this pain is a blessing because I have this love. It's the cost of this love. Don't try to make it better. You can't. I don't like this pain, but I do appreciate this pain because it tells me love. John said, and this is how we began, may your memory be a revolution, which means we can't only cry. And we can't only, though I hope we do, read. We have to make sure that we communicate these messages through every choice we make moving forward. And the final one is based on the central quote that it turns out Eli Sharabi and other hostages learned from Hirsch in captivity. It's actually a quote from Nietzsche. He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how. Hirsch was teaching other people that in the tunnels. Before I close, I just want to ask you to think about your why. Because you've got one. You're part of a sacred why in this work, and you probably have additional. But Rachel said, just last month, my why is not done. So I want to give us that blessing, to remember that our why is far from done. This book will be demanding to read, but I'm suggesting, actually, it's demanded of you to read it, and then to do something really good through the feelings that it gives you. That is a way of honoring Hirsch's memory, of honoring all of those who we remember, and also honoring a matriarch of the Jewish people, Rachel Goldberg-Polin.